Hello, Sippy audience. Thanks for joining us today. Today, we are doing the second part of our videos on our video series for Sippy 2020 new features. Today, as on our last video, I have Pavel, our lead QA, and Philip Ma, our product manager. We are going to be taking you through the extended Authentication Manager. Again, this is one of the improved features that we've got coming up in Sippy 2020. For those of you that entered our sandbox contest, you'll want to pay close attention to the slides so that you can answer the questions that are going to be on the quiz in case you did enter our sandbox contest. For now, I'll let Philip take us through the information, and take it away, Philip.
Thanks, Fred. Today we wanted to talk to you a little bit about one of the new features we have in our 2020 release. This one in particular is our extended Authentication Manager. Today we'll cover why we made this change, what we got out of the change, and some of our testing results as well. But before we get started, we'll also give you a very high-level overview of what our B2B is, since this is sort of an important part to this feature that sort of needs to be covered first. The B2B is a major component to our Sippy soft switch, and it pretty much covers all the business logic and surrounding your calls. So it'll handle a number of the authentications that are handled through the soft switch, as well as making sure that both ends of the call are connected through appropriately. One of the things that we noticed with our previous releases was that particularly on the higher level of capacity, things might not be operating as we would expect. So the B2B has some built-in functionality that handles authentications for each of the individual user agents. For lower CPS customers, this isn't too big of a deal, but for higher calls per second customers who are running their systems on sort of like the hot end of things, we noticed that what could happen is we would see some call processing time spikes in how long it would take for each of those calls to connect each of those user agents. And when that process starts to slow down or can't connect calls in a timely manner, it tends to impact the performance of the overall switch. So to correct this issue, we made an extension to the Authentication Manager, to the B2B to separate out some of the authentication functions to be handled a little bit separately. This frees up the B2B to handle the call processing much more efficiently, and sets the authentication as a separate step that moves the call forward. And as a result of our testing, we're able to see some increases in calls per second values. This equates to about a 30% increase of CPS limits just by splitting off the authentications to a separate function. I'm going to let Pavel talk a little bit more about the testing results here. Pavel?
So basically, the testing results here on this particular slide shows pretty the same CPU utilization. But while checking those slides, keep in mind that Philip said about CPS increase with like 30%. So as you can see in CP 5.2 and CP 2020, the CPU utilization straight from this particular graph was approximately the same. So there were no kind of regression or degradation for CPU utilization for a new release after switching to Auth Manager by placing more calls, like 30% more calls. So if you check the in-progress calls results, so again, this graph in CP 2020, was a little bit affected by bigger amount of calls that were placed via CPS. So as you can see, the in-progress calls, max number of in-progress calls has slightly decreased, but the average number of calls has increased since the CPS was higher. And basically this was the expected picture. So as for mean number of in-progress calls, again, the bigger number of calls that were placed through the switch via increased CPS was affecting the mean and max and average values for that as well. And basically the most interesting slide here is call processing time. So keeping in mind that the switch was operating almost at the top of its hardware capacity, so it was like 90% of CPU utilization on both versions. So from this slide, you can see that max call processing time has decreased. And this basically means that CPT was more stable. There were less spikes, less gaps that could be observed on high CPS. And this is basically the graph that Philip was referring from the very beginning. So in CP 5.2, the amount of CPS that was causing 90% of load to the particular switch, hardware requirements of it could be shared a little bit later. So CP 5.2 was terminating like 220 calls per second. And CP 2020 on its end was sending almost 300 calls per second at the very same CPU load and with lower CPT. This means that calls were processed more accurate, calls were processed faster, there were less spikes, there were less gaps on call processing, which means that hardware was behaving more stable on this higher load.
Thanks, Pavel. And just to clarify, both sets of tests were performed on the same hardware, correct?
Yes, exactly. That was the bare metal server with some powerful Intel processor for like 2.2 gigahertz of this output, and it was, as far as I recall, 16 cores box.
We'll leave a little comment down in the description here about what the hardware specs were for this particular test case, if you guys are curious. But this you know, in this comparison, since they are the same hardware, we could sort of take them as equals. But to sort of wrap this up and sort of describe why this change was important, this new auth manager really does make our solution a lot more scalable for our customers. So in this context, it's more like you could do more with the same hardware that you procure, with the same, get a little bit more performance out of the system. And that really helps out switch operators in that they have fewer concerns or constraints in terms of needing to upgrade systems and taking downtime to migrate systems and whatnot. So this really does help the longevity of your system as well. So we think this is a pretty good feature for our customers, particularly those that push their systems into the red line currently. They think they'll feel a little bit more comfort and a little bit more breathing room and a little bit more longevity to their soft switch. We really wanted to throw thanks to one of our customers, Sales Technologies. They were a key driver in building out this feature request for all of our customers. And it was their reported problems that made us look into this issue a little bit closer, and we were able to deliver this solution on their behalf. So thanks for their continued support for our company. If you're looking for more information on this topic, we do have an article published up on our support forums. That also will be published in the video notes. Thanks, Fred.
Thanks, Philip. Thanks, Pavel. So today, as you've seen, the team has made some improvements through the B2B UA that will allow your hardware to extend essentially its performance so that you can process more calls at faster times. I think that one of the additional benefits that this provides is that it lets customers process a lot more call traffic. Today, in the COVID-19 environment that we're working under, we know how important it is to be able to put through a lot of traffic. So if you are experiencing higher demand from your customer base, you'll definitely get a lot of use out of the new improvements in the B2B UA that are coming up in Sippy 2020. So I hope that you learned a lot from today's session. If you are entered in our sandbox contest, go through the slides and be sure to answer the questions so that you can be entered to win a sandbox. For now, on behalf of Pavel, Philip, myself, and Sippy Software, thank you very much, and we'll see you again.